Wow, what's up, guys? I have not updated in a while like usual. I always take a break because of not being that popular, no obligations. It's a pretty nice life. So I wanted to say though, today's Sunday, it's the Lord's Day, praise Him. Every day's the day He made. But I'm working, so I can't really observe Sabbath all day. Brought my Bible, but what I wanted to talk about today on the Sunday is marriage and divorce and what they really mean in the sad state of affairs in Western Christianity. And the truth is, there are more divorces in the Western church than there are in the general population. And that's including pagans, atheists, and by pagans I mean people who are not necessarily just not Christians or disciples of Christ or whatever you want to call it, because I don't consider the Western church to even be Christian. They can use the word, but their actions indicate otherwise in their beliefs. What I want to say is pagans, my definition in this context would be people who are actively they know about the truth of God, but they're actively rejecting and worshiping something else just to be eccentric. That doesn't include all people who would be, say, Odinists or something. If they truly believe that, biblically you could call them pagans, but I would just, they're worshiping a higher power that they believe is truth. And, I'm sure that they have lower divorce rates, if I had to guess, than the Western church. So we have done what this country has been good at in cutting God out of things, and that is because of the veiled separation of church and state. I say veiled because it's not real. It's supposed to be real. It's only real when it's convenient. I think either way it's an injustice. I think church and state should be one and the same. I don't think it should be like the Catholic Church necessarily, but I think we should have a monarchy of the embodiment of God, or a Jesus Christ as king. And even if that means there's no physical entity as your king, you bow to the things that He decreed, because kings decree things. And the Ten Commandments would be a great thing that was decreed that people should bow to. However, our country has cut those out of most courthouses, and also have made marriage more of a legal business agreement than a spiritual covenant between man, woman, and God. And in doing so, they've corrupted these people who believe that they're quote-unquote good Christians, which don't even exist. According to Jesus, no man is good other than the Father. But these Christians believe, I'm a good Christian, which is a very dangerous position to play, because now your pride is in the way, and you're saying that you're good, which implies other people are bad. All people are filthy rags compared to the Father, and that's the only thing I want to compare myself to. I compare myself jokingly, in a satirical text, or making some sort of a comment about society as a joke, but in reality I know morally I'm no better than anyone else. That also tells me I'm no worse than anybody else. So when people stand on their soapbox and say, you did this and I never did that, well, okay, but you did something else which is equal in God's eyes, so I don't want to hear about it. So that leads me to divorce. If you're getting married and it's just a business agreement, divorcing is simply as convenient as changing jobs in this country. And that's what it is. I mean, women look at men like a job, and they change jobs when they're not satisfied. Men look at women as, and this is what do I want to say? Generalization. This is a broad generalization. But men look at women as something that is almost a possession. And if they don't get to tell this woman what to do, then they want out. And both sexes will use those things I just mentioned as excuses to cheat, which does biblically give them an out. Even according to the mouth of Jesus, He does give them the out to divorce in the case of adultery. Otherwise, people get divorced for the most petty reasons in the world. They'll cite things like dishonesty. They'll cite things like abuse. They'll cite things like he changed over time. which implies that we're supposed to remain completely stagnant from the time that we signed this thing, and now their expectations weren't met. And I think all these things are teaching tools that God uses. If we can learn to tolerate others, especially those that live directly on top of us, and their shortcomings, even when those shortcomings cause me a great deal of grief, even physical and mental agony, if I can learn to tolerate that, and even better, lead by example by turning to God, it might just correct the behavior. And I believe he would turn their heart and he would correct the behavior because he honors marriage. So people are just giving up and divorcing, and I'm going through it right now. Literally, my wife just bounced, right? She's supposedly a Christian. I mean, I can't say she is or isn't. I don't know what people are. I can tell you what their actions look like. And Jesus did say that a good tree won't bear bad fruit and a bad tree won't bear good fruit. But at the same time, my actions are pretty atrocious on a daily basis, right? I mean, so are hers. So is everyone I know. Everyone I know has atrocious actions on a daily basis. I don't know anyone walking like a saint in my personal life. And I would venture to say that even if I followed a bishop like, Marmari Emanuel or something, this high-ranking bishop, I bet if I followed him around for a month, I would find some atrocious stuff he did, i.e. sin. So, anyway, my wife is bouncing, which means I have to look like a monster now because she's the petitioner. And it doesn't matter what either of us have done to one another, because honestly, forgiveness is what we're called to. And I don't even want to mention anything negative that she's done to me because I've already forgiven her for it. And I don't want to have to go to court and tell a judge what she's done to me. And that's what I've been wrestling with the last day. If they ask me questions, I feel compelled to be honest, but I also feel like it's in the past and it's not necessary. But I now realize that this entire thing wasn't a real marriage, because if she's able to terminate it and believe that we're now divorced, we were never married, because it says what God put together, no man shall separate. And that includes the man and woman that are in the covenant. And just because I have free will, my free will doesn't override God's plan. It just doesn't. And I'm sorry, but if he really wanted me to remain with this person physically in physical proximity, he would leave it there. Or even better, we get a legal divorce, but spiritually we're connected anyway. And that would be the ultimate ruse. There is no marriage in heaven. It says that. But it would be the ultimate ruse that I was still married to her. So it does imply in the Bible that that's what really happens, because it says if I divorce a woman, i.e. legally, I cause her to commit adultery, which means if she gets with anyone else, she's an adulteress, because she's actually my wife and I was the one that married her. So if I walk away, then the adultery she commits is on my hands. So that means when she walks away, now when I marry someone else, the adultery is on her hands. That sin is hers. It's not mine. Because I wasn't trying to commit adultery. I was trying to actually correct my behavior and honor the vows I took, which did say for better or for worse. And worse is some pretty nasty stuff. Sorry, it just is. So I learned my lesson because I got my first marriage. I wasn't a Christian, and I divorced and I committed adultery, and that's why I wanted out, was lust. I learned my lesson. If I marry someone, I will never divorce them. And that includes them cheating on me. It includes adultery, because I get to make that decision. Jesus said I could leave. He didn't say I had to. And that God called Hosea back to Gomer, and he bought her back from prostitution. So I don't want to hear about how hard my marriage is and how hard my life is from anyone that I know, because I've read biblical examples that are brutal, that they wouldn't even be able to wrap their head around. And as westernized, fake, whitewashed sepulcher cultural Christians, they have no clue. And I think Jesus Christ would say the same thing, and he might be using me as a mouthpiece today. So I recommend, if you are married, you learn how to love yourself and your spouse biblically, and everything will improve. But don't take my word for it. I'm in a failed marriage.